Good morning. Welcome to the ENVIROlocity Career Interview Series. This is in conjunction with our ENVIROlocity blog, where we were talking about work worth living. This is environmental professionals working in real jobs, real people in real careers. What do they do? How do they get into them? What things can they tell you to stay away from, to get into, how to network? Everyone has a different take, a different path. So you won't necessarily only hear from people in the jobs you might want, but you might hear some interesting things from people from any of these jobs, because a lot of us switched paths along the way. And then there's a lot of recurring themes. So it's interesting to watch and to even be involved in these interviews over time to see how many of the same sort of topics keep coming up. This week, we're talking to Jesse Kerns. He is the program manager at SU for the Sustainable Community Solutions program, which means he gets to do a lot of different fun things. So Jesse, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure, absolutely. So as you said, I'm actually a program coordinator here at Syracuse University Center for Sustainable Community Solutions, and we're a pretty small team, but I think we have a pretty unique function at the university. We're what's known as a boundary organization. So in essence, we act as a conduit between the university and surrounding communities, trying to shuttle information back and forth. So we try to take current research and then digest that in a way that is readily accessible to lots of different people, and we shuttle that out into the communities. But then we also, in working with communities, are able to really see some locally specific knowledge gaps or areas that could use some capacity of some sort, and then we can bring that back up to the university and develop programs for them. Let's see, what else? We have a couple of focus areas that we work in. Half of our team is working on water-related issues. So they're looking at drinking water, wastewater, stormwater infrastructure, and that side of the team is also heavily focused on resiliency too, making our communities able to cope and bounce back from things like stochastic weather events, from disaster events. And the other half of the team, which I'm involved with, we focus on an area called sustainable materials management. And if you were to talk to other professionals, that would fall within the realm of waste management or solid waste management. But we take a little bit of an issue with that term waste. It's this idea that the things that we discard at the end of their useful life no longer have value. So that's why we're adopting that different title, the sustainable materials management. We see those items that we commonly call trash, we see them as resources, as natural resources that we've extracted, and they still have use. We just got to plug them back into the system somehow. So you might know that term, sustainable materials management, better as waste reduction, reuse, and recycling. So those are the two main focus areas. Like I said, we do a lot of work with communities. We're primarily funded through federal, state, and other miscellaneous grants. So we don't receive any direct funding from the university. It's all through soft funding, like grants.
Okay, I'm learning already. This is what I love about talking to you, is like, I feel like there's an endless road of things to talk about. So how many people work in this program?
We have, I'm not gonna be able to count off the top of my head right now, about a dozen. So between 10 and 12 individuals, some of them full-time, some of them part-time. And then we have, each semester, we have a few interns that come and help us boost capacity a little bit too. I should note that in the spring semester, through my program, we offer what's known as a stewardship program. So we open up roughly 15 positions to undergrad and graduate students at Syracuse University and SUNY-ESF that allows them to come in, and we train them on sustainable materials management, and then we help to guide them through the development and implementation of hands-on community projects. So what we want to do is assist them with taking all of the theoretical things that they've been learning in the classroom, and then to give them that opportunity to actually go out into the community and try to do some sort of project to feel like they're applying the knowledge that they've learned in a very concrete and tangible way.
Yeah, that's awesome. For some universities, that's a novel concept. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are doing that. Do you think that there are other, is this a unique program actually for universities, or is this something that students should be looking to see what their universities or colleges might be offering?
So I can give you a little history about our center. We started back in the early 90s, I think around 1993, and we were what's known as an environmental finance center at Syracuse University. And so what that was is, at the time in the early 90s, the Environmental Protection Agency, they wanted to create a mechanism that they could provide more assistance, technical assistance, to communities throughout the country to help them come into compliance with laws that were being promulgated since the 1970s, and just to help them with the variety of environmental issues that they were facing. And so what they did is they came up with this concept of environmental finance centers, and they decided to site them in each of their 10 regions and to put them into universities themselves. So if you look in all 10 regions of the US, there used to be 10, we might be down to 9 environmental finance centers, but for each EPA region, there used to be an EFC. So that's how we started back in the 90s. And then in the 2000s, we wanted to diversify the type of programming that we did and just become a little more stable with our funding, because depending on the priorities of whatever administration is in office on the federal level, the budget levels can fluctuate. So we wanted to give our staff a little more stability by having different funding streams too. So that's where we adopted that secondary title, Center for Sustainable Community Solutions. So if there are other folks from around the country watching this that are curious if there's a similar program in their area, they can go to the EPA's website and they can look up environmental finance centers, and they might be able to plug in that way. I think there's also a website called the Environmental Finance Center Network, EFCN for short, that they could get some more information as well.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, I have not heard of that before. So we'll include that also in the description so people can easily get to that. Tell me a little bit more about how you got there. It's a great opportunity. And like I said, you have a lot of, it seems like, autonomy, and not that you get to pick and choose exactly what you're doing, but maybe a little bit more than someone who works in the government itself. So if you could explain, like, what skills benefited you, and just kind of how your interest led you there, and any insights you might have in that.
Okay, I mean, I can take this way back, and I think this is kind of the goal of the interview series, right? Is to track somebody's academic experiences into emerging out into their first professional experiences. So let's go way back to 2006 when I was graduating high school. I was very into filmmaking, and I wanted to go to undergrad to become a filmmaker, which is funny to look back on now. Because those are certainly not my interests anymore. So it's interesting that we ask high school students at the age of 17 or 18 to make a snap decision right then.
Oh, tell me about it.
It feels like it's putting a lot of pressure on you, right? But now that where I am, I can attest to saying the decision that you make then doesn't necessarily, stamp the rest of your life into place. You can always be making changes and adjustments and follow different career paths and opportunities. So anywho, I was 18, I wanted to make films, so I went to a SUNY school out past Buffalo, SUNY Fredonia, to get a communications degree. And so I spent 4 years there, and I knew with 2 semesters to go that was no longer the field that I wanted to go into. And it was giving me a lot of anxiety because I had spent all of this time, all of this effort, had incurred student loan debt for a profession that I was no longer interested in after 4 years of studying it. So anywho, I graduated, and shortly after I was working in retail. I was working in a retail position. I was working it was a used music shop in the Syracuse area where we were selling guitars and drum kits and all that kind of stuff. And then as part of the recession, that company went out of business and I was unemployed. From there, since there weren't, in my view at the time, there weren't a lot of opportunities in the Syracuse area, and having been from Central New York, I grew up in a small town, I wanted to experience a larger metropolitan area. So I had an opportunity to move down to Philadelphia and stay with some people that we knew down there. And shortly thereafter, I got an internship with a magazine publishing company called Red Flag Media. One of the publications of that company is called Grid Magazine, and it exists to this day. It's a free publication that covers movers and shakers in the Philadelphia area that are doing anything related to sustainability. And we covered the whole gamut of topics to sustainable transportation. So more public transit or transportation via bicycle, urban agriculture, waste reduction through composting and recycling and reduction, local business, renewable energy opportunities, all that kind of stuff. Each month that the publication came out is a different type of topic. And I started with them as an intern, so I was just doing a bunch of miscellaneous tasks. But then the longer that I stayed, some positions opened up, and I eventually got into a position where I was selling their advertising. So that was how the magazine funded itself. The big premise behind it was that it was a free publication, so the information could be widely available to a wide variety of audiences, regardless of where in the city you lived. And so we, we paid for all of the staff time and the publication through advertising. So I was selling advertising space, and I was also managing the distribution. So handling the logistics after printing, when we would get all the magazines, and there were 30,000 plus copies that we would get each month, and then send those out to the 450 plus locations. Really interesting job. I learned so much about the very wide variety of professions or way that you can get into a sustainability related job. And over time, I came to realize that I no longer wanted to write about those job opportunities. I wanted to be somebody in the magazine that was being written about. And so that all those people, really, really fascinating and impressive people that we wrote about, inspired me to go back to school. And so in 2015, I came back to the Syracuse area and I got my master's degree at SUNY-ESF, specifically in environmental science. And my focus area was coupled natural and human systems. I was really interested in the way that people perceive themselves to either be a part of nature, to be separate from nature, how, we often think of them as two different realms, and how they interact, how they mutually influence and impact one another. So that was my focus area going in. But my strategy was unique with grad school. I spoke with a couple of different advisors at SUNY-ESF and told them kind of my goal. And this is how they advised me. I told them I wasn't interested in going straight through to get a PhD. I wasn't interested in remaining in academia. I wanted to get a master's degree and then go back out to the professional world. And so they suggested that I get what's called a Master of Professional Studies instead of a Master of Science. The difference being that instead of doing a research project, the culmination of my education would be a professional experience. So I'm gonna pause there for a second. So that's what I chose, was the Master of Professional Studies. What I liked a lot about the degree that I got, the environmental science, specifically coupled natural and human systems, is that the curriculum, they had 3 different pots of classes that you could choose from. So it wasn't a very rigid and strict curriculum. You could really choose those classes that spoke to you the most. And so that was kind of my strategy. I went through trying to select classes that I thought would make me most marketable. So learning about environmental law and policy, learning about invasive species, taking statistics, taking a class on geographic information systems. I was looking at a lot of jobs that were being offered at the time and looking at that skills field to see what they were really looking for. And that was in part, in addition to just my own academic and professional interests and personal interests, I was using that as a guide to select the classes that I took.
That's awesome.
So back to that professional experience requirement for my degree, this was really just pretty lucky. While I was going through my program, the associate director here at SU-CSCS, Chris Dodson, he had contacted my advisor and said, hey, we have a part-time, kind of like an internship position opened up in our office. Do you have any grad students that would be interested in this topic area? And I hadn't really thought about waste management, sustainable materials management while I was going through my degree. I was interested in things like helping water quality through riparian buffers or ecosystem restoration or invasive species management, all that type of stuff.
Fun stuff.
But then when this opportunity came up, my advisor said, hey, do you want a paid position that's pretty closely related to things that you want to do, and it could count for your professional requirement for your degree? I said, absolutely. And so I interviewed for the position, I got it, and that's how I got my foot in the door here at Syracuse University. So I worked the whole time that I was going to grad school, and things just happened to kind of work out budget-wise with the grants that were coming in, that when I was graduating, I was able to come on full-time here at the center. So that, in a nutshell, I don't know what that was, 5-7 minutes. That was a nutshell of high school, how I came all the way back to Syracuse University.
That's okay. That's great. I just was on a call with someone yesterday and explaining my background, and I'm like apologizing also for how much of the time it took to go through that. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate and love about doing these interviews, is showing people that there isn't one path. There isn't one degree that leads to one job, and there isn't, it is okay if you thought you were going one direction and you were exposed to something else and you decided to do something else. That's really, a lot of successful people have done that already. And I think it's like you said, at first you might feel like you're failing at it if you're in film school and you realize, oh shoot, this isn't what I wanted to do. But there's still going to be some value you get out of it. I'm sure that's helped you. You've brought those skills with you in some strange, random way into what you're doing now.
That's such a great point. And yeah, I'd like to speak to that too. So right after graduating with a film degree, I was feeling very poorly about it. Like I had wasted time and I had wasted money, and I had kind of come to resent that decision that I made when I was 17, 18 years old. But yeah, now having worked in the field, I've found so many different ways that I've drawn upon that initial education, and I look at it much differently now. So a lot of the communication classes that I was taking, there was public speaking. And so I'll go to an event for my work now where I'll get up in front of 80 plus teachers from the Central New York area. And without having that public speaking class, I'd be a nervous mess. I wouldn't know how to organize my thoughts beforehand, or how to practice, or how to present myself. So that was a huge skill. And I was kind of an introverted person in high school too. So I was nervous in front of large crowds, and that really helped me to grow personally through that. And then there was interpersonal communication, which was a huge class. When you talk about communication, it's not just you being able to present some idea in a way that other people are easily able to digest or to understand. A huge part of communication is listening to others, and actively listening too. So kind of suspending your judgments and suspending any of your responses to them until you fully absorb what they're trying to say to you. And I think that is an absolutely crucial skill when you're trying to engage with audiences that you're working with, or clients that you're working with. If you're trying to mediate between different stakeholders, you need to really show people that you're making an honest and good faith effort of hearing them from their perspective, or else you're not going to have that collaboration, and a lot of your projects can break down. So that was another huge one. And then the production classes, audio and video production, that's been huge too. I found unique and creative ways to bring in video production to my work to help communicate about various environmental issues. We did a single-use plastics grant a couple of years ago, and we wanted to make a short series of comedic videos to kind of trick people into learning something about single-use plastics production. So we had these little fictional narrative. They were just like 1 to 2 minute videos where you thought you were starting to watch a commercial or a PSA about one thing, and then it would kind of transform into this problem of plastic pollution of waterways. So yeah, it's really amazing, all of the things from the undergraduate degree that are now kind of informing some of my work too, or helping to enhance it in so many ways.
Yeah, that's great. So all of you people watching, keep that in mind. Just keep moving forward, work towards a goal. And if it shifts, it changes, just bring what you learned with you and keep going with that. And I can see already just the way that you have your setup, that you have that, you have that mindset. So you're not quite right. You're just same as me. We're not quite right in the middle. And
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it
shows
just right.
Yeah. That's great. So what do you think is probably the most rewarding or surprising thing about the specific work that you do that you would encourage somebody who wants to get into sustainability or working in the community to really glom onto?
Sure. So let's start with the most surprising thing. So my field, sustainable materials management, I go to a lot of different facilities. I go to landfills. I go to what they're called MRFs, material recovery facilities. I've gone to large reuse centers. I've gone to commercial scale compost facilities. And just as what I considered myself to be an environmentally conscious person, I thought I understood the scope and the scale of waste. And when you go to these facilities and you see it with your own eyes, when you go to a landfill and you just see dump truck after dump truck loading materials into a hole in the ground, or you go to a MRF and you just see this endless conveyor belt of recyclables going by. You go to a reuse center and it's just mountains and mountains of clothing. You go to a compost facility and it's truckloads of food that looks pretty good actually, that
Right.
shouldn't actually be ready to compost yet. Food that otherwise could have been edible. I'm just day by day staggered at the amount of waste that comes out of our societal activities. So that still kind of stuns me in my work to this day, even though I've been working here since 2016. It's just the amount of waste that there is out there. So I've got job security for a while. I'm gonna do my best, but it's a huge, gigantic issue. But then moving into what's the most rewarding part. I think, well, there's a couple of things. One, I'm always feeling very satisfied at the number of like truly caring people there are out there. We have a tendency to become jaded sometimes, right? That we're facing such monumental challenges that no matter what we do, maybe we're not making a lot of progress. But the more that I interact with folks, the more I'm kind of painting this picture. I work mainly in New York, so painting this picture across New York of all of these people that are working so hard and they're so invested to make a difference. And they're making a difference because they want to see it benefit their community. They want to see it for the greater good for their people. It's not something that they're doing selfishly, for personal gain. It's really kind of an altruistic thing, both for society and for, the environment in a larger sense. So that's hugely rewarding to me, is to see all of those really, really passionate and hardworking, inspirational people that are out there.
Great. And yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's another one of those themes that keeps coming up, is that sort of the dark side that you can see when you get into the environment, of kind of the reality of things, but then how do you balance that with staying motivated and keeping going? And that's definitely one of those things. One more question and then we'll go into the lightning round, but I like to ask, what is your favorite way to network?
My favorite way to network, okay, I'm gonna cheap out on this one a little bit because it's such an easy answer, I think. So in the Syracuse area, we have this new meetup called the Syracuse Area of Environmental Professionals that happens once a month, and that has been one of my favorite lately. Just learning about all the great stuff that are happening in the Syracuse area, because my work tends to take me all over the state, and I don't get to spend most of my time in the Syracuse area. So coming back on a monthly basis and to see established professionals, to see emerging professionals, to see students. It's just a really cool variety of people in an informal setting that you can just talk candidly with folks about. That's one of the great ones. I do enjoy conferences too, because that tends to get a lot of the industry or the field folks together. And there's a lot of like secondary network connections that can be made that way. I feel like I've been in the field long enough now that I've got a lot of the immediate ones, but then those networks keep kind of growing out and out based on someone that you already know. They'll pass you along to somebody else too. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's any one networking opportunity. I would say go after a variety of them, because each type, like at the Syracuse meetings, you're not going to meet as many people as you would at a conference, but the meetings at the Syracuse happy hour get-togethers tend to be more intimate. You have maybe longer conversations and more of an informal setting that you can really kind of dig down into some nitty-gritty details with somebody.
Awesome. And that is maybe not coincidentally how we met. And actually the NAP, the National Association, which I'm a board member of and is the larger umbrella, they had a webinar today. Actually, they might be recording. I should know because I'm supposed to be in it, but we're doing this instead. They're actually doing a leadership webinar, and I think it's free. So it talks about those benefits of joining. And so they have that made up group in several places all around the country. So that's usually one of my number ones to recommend to people. All right, so lightning round questions. These are just, I share 2 different words and you just pick one. So it's kind of an intuitive sort of thing. Okay. So Cybertruck or DeLorean?
DeLorean.
Benji or Lassie?
Lassie.
Rivers or oceans?
Rivers.
Europe or Asia?
Europe.
And I could have been talking about countries or music. Recycle or repurpose?
Repurpose.
Awesome, thanks. So finally, I really appreciate you being here. Do you mind if people have an open door to find you on LinkedIn and connect with you if they have any questions?
I don't mind at all. I'm more than happy to share my contact information and to talk about what I do more, or to connect them with other folks that might be in their region or maybe more closely aligned with what their interest might be. I'm more than happy to speak with folks about that.
Great. So thank you so much again for doing this interview and sharing your time and expertise with us. It will be a valuable resource for lots of other people, I'm sure. So like I mentioned before and in the sneak preview, that this is part of the larger playlist that will be on YouTube. If you are able to hit the subscribe button so that you get notifications when the next ones happen. We have a very exciting interview coming up in the next 2 weeks, I think, with Dr. Thomas Rashad Easley. He is a diversity and inclusion and natural resource forestry person at Yale. So I'm super excited about that. He also happens to do a little bit of hip hop on the side. So
Nice.
I'm super excited. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. There are tons and tons of free resources on my website. So please go check those out and share them too with other people. So everyone have a happy holidays. And thank you so much again, Jesse. We'll see you later. Well,
Thanks
actually,
so
I'll see you at the holiday party, I hope.
Yeah, I will see you there. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks.